Sancho to score. No mistakes this time.
That is a rocket.
Royce and another fantastic goal by Marco Royce. Haaland's volley is beautiful beyond compare.
Jetzt kommt das Wunder von Dortmund. Foulspiel von Inzo an Götze.
Needs to lay it off. We're going to shot away. Oh, what a goal!
Welcome back to Dortmund Dispatch. Today I'm joined by Ali and Brian. So, Brian, I hear you went swimming this weekend?
Oh, what a wonderful way to introduce today's podcast episode. Yeah, in the passenger seat of my car in the front of it. Yeah, we got puddles. We got enough water to successfully raise a goldfish, but it's fine. Yeah, we'll figure it out. It is what it is. Dortmund won though, so that's good. I'm happy about that, I guess. How about you, Ollie? How are you doing?
Oh, stay blessed, just try to look at the positive side of things. I'm healthy, I'm around. I got to see Dortmund win, and I'm happy with that. And if I'm cutting up on the call, don't worry about it. It's fine. Don't worry. My internet's trash. It's always been trash.
We'll hear it in the recording.
There you go. But yeah, man, everything's good.
It'll be nice because I couldn't hear anything you just said.
Neither could I. It was just all mouth moving, and I was just all right, I'm just gonna smile.
I'm good. That's all that matters. I'm good.
I'm glad to hear.
This is gonna be a test for my hosting capabilities.
How are you doing, Eli? Tell us about the hole in your purchases.
Oh, so I went to a bunch of yard sales this weekend, and I did not realize until I got home that I got a blazer for $5 that fully has a hole it on the left arm, so not wearable. It's very big, it's irreparable. Unlike Dortmund's form this season, maybe probably well, we'll see, but hopefully Dortmund's form is repairable. But on the whole of my day walking 5 miles to about 20-something yard sales, I did come away with a $1 book and a $1 shirt, and the $1 shirt makes it all worth it because with some of the stuff going on in the U.S. And the recent thrift store prices going significantly up, my $1 shirt being a Brooks Brothers made in USA, that's about a plus $9 value compared to a thrift store right there, especially in my area. So very happy with that on the whole of it. But let's talk about Borussia Dortmund. Let's do some escapism, because for the first week in a long time, Dortmund didn't even have a moment in the match where you kind of had to take a breath and really start to worry about this. But why was that, Brian? What went right for Borussia Dortmund in this match?
I think the easiest thing we could point to is they took their chances, and they took them fairly early. I think the first goal was scored in the 30th minute or something like that. So you're taking the game by the scruff of the neck pretty early on, and that always helps. And they didn't let up. I think that's the other thing too. I thought you saw, I think we saw a level of persistence that we've all kind of been calling for all season, both in the last game and in the game that we just watched this weekend. So overall, I think it's just, maintaining a high level of pressure within the game, not letting up, and not really underestimating your opponent. Because I think Freiburg is probably one of the worst teams you can underestimate in the league. And I think they took the game pretty professionally, and they had some fun with it. So I think, overall, I think maintaining that pressure was kind of key.
Yeah, so for Freiburg, they were missing Atabulu, who's been very, very key in their recent run into Champions League contention. So he was a little bit negative by post-shot XG in the first half of the season, or first third of the season. And since then, he's really turned it on, spurred Freiburg into a massive run of form, but then he gets injured for this match, and I don't know if it was the fact that Borussia Dortmund is starting to play like Borussia Dortmund, or if having a backup goalie led to some confidence issues among the Freiburg team. But Ali, do you think that played a big factor in this match?
Well, I can only speak to our boys and things of that nature because like from what I saw, I think Brian said it really well. We did take our chances. We did have a bit of luck in terms of like deflections and things of that nature. But I think that I think everybody played well. There were a couple chances that we conceded that I don't want to see moving forward because there was one where Ben Sebaini had to clear it off the line, and another one where Riason tucked in like a little too close, open space up behind him. Like it could have quickly turned on its head, but like Brian said, we took our chances, and that's ultimately what made the difference. And I would say a bit of fortune on those first two goals especially.
I kind of do want to comment on that Ben Sebaini stop because I think it really does underline his season this season, and it's night and day different from what it was last season. He's been far more of a contributor, both going forward and both defensively. I think the team has had to rely on him a lot more. And I think he's really stepped into that role quite well. And I think it's very impressive, especially in a situation where we were playing also a back three at times in this game, and he came into that role, and I think he did quite well overall. And I think that sort of like last ditch clearance really encapsulates kind of the shift in form and shift in, I guess, like ability that he's been able to show for us. So I just wanted to give him his flowers there. So kudos for that.
Yeah, but back to what Ali was saying, like I mentioned already, like Freiburg was missing a key player, but Borussia Dortmund was missing a player who is genuinely world class in Nico Schlotterbeck. I think you could see very clearly our build up play was impacted by that. Not necessarily that any one player was doing anything poorly or wrong in this match. Like even Emre Can, I don't have a bad word to say about in possession really in this match. Like there's nothing specifically that's standing out in my mind about him, but there is a certain amount of calmness and control Nico Schlotterbeck gives you when your team has the ball. And he's been criticized a little bit that he's not quite as good against the ball, but like obviously only one goal goes in against us in this match, but if you look at other performances where Nico Schlotterbeck's picked up criticism, maybe more goals went in, but we certainly conceded a lot less and a lot lower quality chances than we did in this match. And I think that people often criticize defenders for like the goals that a team concedes when they don't necessarily line up with the amount of chances and the quality of chance that is actually like symptomatic of how well the defense is doing. And I think Schlotterbeck has been getting some unfair criticism from that because I think he's been really, really good on both sides of the ball. And like, uh, there are other members of the defense that are maybe a bit less stable, but Schlotterbeck's stability was something that you didn't need in this match to beat a Freiburg team that's been pretty good all season. Um, their attacking performances haven't been what's pushed them up the table, but I think that you can say in this match that it's very impressive, and it goes to show you that while under previous coaches, rotation was a bit of an excuse for guys like Nuri Shaheen or Edin Terzic, and they needed their 11 guys on the pitch. Uh, Under a professional manager like Niko Kovac, he can come up with different ways and different systems. Also, Sergio Guirassy not ready to start for back-to-back weeks, and yet they're still getting it done. So do you want to talk about like the adaptation to that three at the back system? I know Brian is gonna talk and wax lyrically about our front two right now when I give this question, but can you talk to me a little bit about what a manager can do to kind of make up for missing uh your best player in Nico Schlotterbeck and your best paid player in Sarah Garassi, and how was Nico Kovac able to overcome these options? Because we've been critical of him at times, but after this match, I know Brian. I'll let you do the analysis for now.
I mean, At the end of the day, I think it doesn't come down just to the match day. I'm sure like there's been a lot of work behind the scenes that's also gone into it. I mean, initially when he came in, we heard about him, ordering that lactate test for everyone to like, uh just kind of like get the levels basically to like kind of like know where everyone's at. And that sort of lactate test that they did, usually that's something that's done at the beginning of the season or like during preseason or something like that. So I mean, he's taken the steps throughout, I think, getting in here to really get to know his players and really get to know their strengths and weaknesses. And I think we do end up seeing that both defensively and offensively. Now in the defense, obviously, in this case, kind of like what you said, Eli, we did see a drop in quality without Schlotterbeck there, but he's been able to get these guys running in a way where it's not necessarily the be all end all if that player isn't there, because like you said, they can still get the job done. Now going forward, which is obviously kind of like what you said, I'm going to sing my praises in this vein. But he did pair Maxi Bayer and Karim Adeyemi up top together, something that both players are very familiar with, that worked for them at their previous clubs, and it is something that we talked about at great length on this podcast. So he was able to kind of take like that detriment that's not having Girassi and putting together the players that he does have to great effect, using their strengths to the team's strength. It's not even about individual performances at this point, individual quality. He has them running as a unit, and working to these different players' strengths and putting them in these proper positions has allowed that to flourish. So I do think he does deserve a lot of credit for that, because I don't think we've necessarily even seen like Adeyemi play up in a front two under either Terzic or Şahin.
He did a couple times under Şahin, or not Şahin, under Terzic. If you specifically remember, like I think it was leg one, or not leg one. It was the first group stage match against PSG. Adeyemi played up front with Daniel Malen in a 3-5-2, to very poor effect.
Well, I mean, there's other reasons for that, but I mean, I think like in a consistent sense, we haven't seen that, and I think here now we're going 2 weeks on a row, or 2 weeks in a row, I should say, where it has been used and it's been used to great effect, and I think that also with what you're mentioning there, perhaps had to do with the dynamic between Malen and Adeyemi, and we'll talk more about this later with our post match quote, but. Yeah, I think the two have a really good understanding, and I think that's also very key. I think when you are playing that front two system, the two attackers have to have a really good understanding for it to really focus, or for them to really focus in and for it to do well, and I think that's exactly what happened here.
Yeah, and I do recall, I think like during that match, we also played, I think, the match before or after. I think we played against the league team with the 3-5-2 and we did win. But I think it's more just the overall system from Niko Kovac, and some of the pressing triggers are really what's making the difference there and allowing the team to kind of function, and then letting Maxi Bayer and Karim Adeyemi do what they want to do. Ali, do you have anything to say about like that front two? Because obviously last week it was a bit more about the corner kicks, 2 goals coming off corners. This week the open play was a little bit better. Do you want to talk about what you were seeing in some of these counter-attacking chances?
Yeah, of course. So I think we talked about it a few weeks ago, that we usually have a hard time with teams that like to sit back, but we have the pace to get in behind, and finally being able, or looking for those passes in behind to Bayer, to Karim, in these last few matches has been really, really nice to see, because like that's their strength, you know what I mean, to get into these pockets of space to counterattack. And yeah, it was not the cleanest game that we've had, but we created chances, we were threatening, and we showed that we're not just one-dimensional, which is like a big problem I've had in these past few months, where we seemed like we can only play one way, and if that didn't work, well, it seemed like it was over for us. But we talked about the 3-4-3, 3-5-2 system for a while, and it's just I'm glad that it's being used. One, and two, I'm glad that it's working because we knew we had the profiles. It was always there. It's just good to see it actually in effect. But yeah, I was gonna ask you, Eli. I'm so sorry if I'm cutting up your hosting. What do you think of Chukwuemeka? Because I want to talk about him.
I don't know. I think that he's being overpraised for this match. So for the first 20 minutes, I thought he was very anonymous. 20 minutes is a very small portion of a match. Overall, I don't necessarily think he was excellent. He's getting a lot of credit for a massively deflected goal. I don't want to be critical of him because I don't think he was bad, but I'm not seeing anything to like merit the type of fee that's being talked about. I'm not like blown away by anything I've seen. I don't know how much else to talk about it because like we're talking about a guy who had point 0.3 like non-penalty expected goals plus expected assisted goals. That's less than we've seen from Brandt this season. Like that's across 69 minutes, so okay, like that's about on par at best with Julian Brandt. Julian Brandt I thought was pretty good in this match, playing a little bit of a deeper role. He created 1.1 expected assisted goals. Like I think that we're seeing signs of a good player, but at the current rumored price and these constant rumors that are coming up every week, Dortmund really wants to. Dortmund really wants to. Like we saw the same thing with Matson, and I was like, well, Matson's good, but he's not that good. And I think we've seen that he hasn't lived up to that price tag that was rumored. This season he hasn't really gotten the chances. When he has, he's been fine, but Luca Digne is a like 30-year-old okay left back, and Aston Villa haven't been great in the league, and they've had to play a lot of football, and he has not found his time. I think that Ian Matson is going to end up being not Ian Matson, excuse me, Carney Chukwuemeka is going to end up in a very similar situation where he's going to have that English homegrown tag and be worth an absolutely extortionate transfer fee to a certain English club that is willing to take that risk. But I think it would be very unwise for Borussia Dortmund to do so because I think there's a lot better ways of spending that money and doing so on 2 to 3 players, especially if we don't make the Champions League. If we make the Champions League and then we get an extra like 20 million to spend, like Brian and I did our how to fix, and then all of a sudden, if you're not having that massive deficit, then like we would have had like how much extra to spend?
It was around like 60 mil, and that's kind of the thing. I think you did hit the nail right on the head with that. In terms of it's far too early as of yet to automatically say like yeah spend the 35 million. But I did just want to quickly say I don't necessarily think, especially for me, it wasn't really the goal that impressed me. It was that little moment that led up to the Brandt assist. It was that through ball. And for me personally, I thought that was extremely impressive, and that's not an element of our game that we have a lot of in the squad. So if you have a lot more of those moments coming from a player like Carney Chukwuemeka, like if he shows that that is a consistent aspect of your game and you're able to even be, the person that provides that hockey assist, the second assist or whatever, then that's also a very, very good thing to have in your squad as well. But once again, you do need to see this on a far more consistent basis than what we've seen so far, and we need to see him be able to stay on the pitch and stay fit for longer than he has. So if he has all those capabilities, then by all means, then you can think about that fee and talk to Chelsea. But until we see that, I think that's we need to just temper our expectations with that.
And like the one thing I'd say statistically, like he had 6 progressive passes, but the thing that's standing out to me is he was playing as a number 10. Julian Brandt was by expected assisted goals our leading creator, but for me, Karnichuk will make a 95% pass completion percentage, 19 of 20. I don't want my number 10 to ever finish like that because I want him playing that final ball. I want him playing dangerous passes. And I think there were times in this match where he could have done so and didn't. Um, and like there's times where he got the ball in the final third, and like even when he scores the goal, I think there's a better decision than taking that shot because there's a pass he can potentially find that leads to a shot that is of a much higher value and more likely to go in than a deflected chance. So I don't want to be too critical because he did nothing wrong in this match, but I think he could have done more right. And if I'm looking at this from like the sporting director viewpoint, I don't think I've seen enough, and I don't think it's possible to see enough in how little time he will be fit for during the rest of the season. But let's talk about a Kareem Adeyemi quote. He said, "Overall, we can be satisfied. Winning 4-1 away from home is a good result. We could have scored more before the break. The late goal we conceded is annoying. Apart from that, everything was great. We're taking the basics to heart, and the 2 wins in a row. Uh, it says are really good for us. My grammar is coming out. It should be is. Uh, Maximilian Bayer and I were able to quickly adapt to the new situation as a front two, something we're familiar with from our previous teams. It suits us both. We understand each other." And so this just goes into what Brian was talking about earlier. Ali, do you have anything else that you want to react to from this quote?
No, I mean, there's not really much there. He's just, he just summarized the game. He did kind of give a nudge to say like, we know the situation and we've been here before at different clubs in terms of our tactical shift. And no, it's just good to see the confidence and desire obviously to keep the clean sheet. That did, I'm not gonna lie, bother me. 4-0 would have sounded a lot better than 4-1. But it is what it is. And yeah, there's not much to add on to what he said. I agree fully.
Okay, and we got some previews, so we gotta go quickly into our star of the week. Brian, I'm gonna let you start off.
I
I
get
don't
to
want to say anything else because I think I know where it's going.
It,
But
it's if I get to say Maxi Bayer multiple weeks in a row, it means we're playing well and it's a good week. So yes, Maxi Bayer 2 assists. I mean, a little like the first one I guess was a little bit lucky in the sense of like where it was kind of deflected to Kareem for that shot. Um, at the end of the day, he had to be there to do that, and it still counts. So yeah, racking up more of a tally. His numbers are looking so much better, and his performances are as persistent as ever. So I'll keep it short and sweet. Maxi Bayer.
fair enough. I mean, like Maxi Bayer, since he's become a regular in the starting 11, has been an excellent player. I don't want to take the time out to do the math, but I'm pretty sure if you like butter knife his stats and you take out like the first 6 games, we're talking about one of the best wingers by expected goals and assists in the league. Um, Outside of Bayern Munich, where the numbers are fake because they destroy everyone. But Ali, who is your star of the week?
I loved Kareem this weekend. I thought he was always on his toes. He was on the front foot. Him and Bayer obviously were leading our lines. Um, he was exactly how I envisioned him to be in a system like this, which is always in behind, always pressing. So I enjoyed everything about his performance. And what a finish, by the way. Crazy.
Yeah, Kareem Adeyemi actually had more expected assists than Maxi Bayer in this match. I was gonna go in that direction, but now I have to go in a different one because I gotta go with a guy who's been criticized a lot this season, and I've said he's been not himself, but he's been fine. And it's Julian Brandt, team high for expected assisted goals in this match at 1.1. That's genuinely ludicrous. I talked about our ball progression. Master Nico Schlotterbeck, our main guy in terms of getting the ball forward, was missing in this match, and this is a guy who stepped up in his absence. with a team high for progressive passes. Um, he stepped into a role that he's typically, I would say, less good at in that number 8 position to allow Carney Chukwuemeka onto the pitch. And he played 47 passes, which is a lot higher than you would see from a number 10, and like was really good with them. And we're talking about 83% pass accuracy. And when you're team high for progressive passes, you have that many key passes, you have that many shot creating actions, and you're creating big chances. Like that's like pretty good pass accuracy for still being able to play those dangerous balls. I think that like there's times where he could still be better in possession, take better touches. He cannot dribble anymore, unfortunately. I think that like one of the ways he could get back to his better form is if he just tries to dribble a little bit less, because in this match I felt like I saw him try and take someone on and I was just like, what are we doing? He had 1 of 4 take-ons, and this is a guy who for a long time in the Bundesliga was very efficient at taking players on, but not since he's turned 26, which is the age curve for physicality, not necessarily statistical output decline. But yeah, his dribbling ability has gotten much worse. He needs to realize that with his play, which is very hard to do because he's been playing the same way for 10 years. But yeah, this performance was good for a player that's been one of the most criticized for Borussia Dortmund. I think we need to be able to talk about how like he's still a good player, and if we're replacing him, we need to make sure we get in actual genuine quality. But yeah, do you guys think I'm off base? Are we gonna just go on the hate train on Julian Brandt? Because I don't think I'm there. I haven't been there.
I don't want to say like hate train, but I mean, at the end of the day, we have to recognize he isn't the player that he was, and I think that's pretty clear. And I think, just because you recognize a player's shortcomings doesn't mean you're necessarily on a hate train. And I think a lot of the criticism has been valid. Yeah, I mean, he had a good game, so that's always good. And a Julian Brandt in form can be a sensational player. It's just we haven't seen that more often than not this season, so I can understand why people have very much been like, yeah, like it's time to part ways. And I think that's something I've kind of struggled back and forth with, because as a player, I very much like Julian Brandt, and I think once again, when he's on it and when he can be that creative force that we know he can be, then he's fantastic. But at the end of the day, one of the other things that is one of the consistent things about him is that he is inconsistent, and it's just something that we've had to deal with, and it's something that the club, I guess, have to weigh. Do you want to continue to take this risk on a player that does have these inconsistencies? Excuse me. But yeah, so I mean, I don't know. Like that's a tough question to answer, and but I do agree with you, Eli, that if you are replacing him, I think you do need to replace him with a top-notch talent to make sure that we're not taking a step down necessarily. So, and I do think like during our how to fix video, I think there were multiple options that we could keep in mind that could come in and play that role. So there's no lack of that for them to look into.
Ali, I know you hate stats, but just I want to put this out into the world. How much do you think Verts is leading Julian Brandt by non-penalty expected goals plus expected assisted goals per 90? Like, what do you think the gap is there?
Okay, for me to answer this, I would need to understand stats. So, I'm gonna say he. I don't even know. Let's say Verts doesn't even double it. I'll say it like that. I don't know.
I'll give you Sergio Guirassí's at like around 0.8 this season. A little higher after this match. Julian Brandt is at 0.51.
0.51? God damn.
Where, like,
oh
how
my
much
goodness.
do you think Verts is better than him by?
I would say Verts. I haven't heard much of him this season, so I'm gonna say he's at like 0.92.
He is overperforming this statistic massively
Hmm.
in terms of his actual assist output and his actual goal output. But he's only at 0.53.
Oh,
So
yeah.
when we're talking about like actual output, like
Yeah.
yes, Vertz's teammates are nearly doubling up his expected assisted goals. Uh, Julian Brandt is on par by underlying numbers.
Hmm.
Not saying they're having the same quality of season
Yeah.
because
I
Verts
was
is
about to
finished.
say.
Verts was finished. Verts was finishing everything, but in terms of like actual creativity, Julian Brandt is pretty much on par with Verts. Um, Maybe even like creating more per 90. I think. So we're talking about just in terms of expected assisted goals. We're talking about point 0.3 for point 0.3 something for Brunt, and if I look it up right now, you're talking about 0.25 or excuse me 0.29. So Brunt's xG is a little bit lower. He doesn't take penalties, so if you look at the xG rather than the non-penalty xG, there's a much bigger difference. And if you look at the goals, that like compacts the difference there. But in terms of the actual creativity, Julian Brandt has been marginally better in a down year. Obviously, even if you take away penalties, like there's still a 0.02 difference, and Verts is finishing more chances. But the bigger difference is that Verts' teammates are finishing everything that he gives them, and Leverkusen have been very lucky in that regards the last 2 seasons. But like
I
just when we talk about players, like narratives get built, and I'm not saying Verts is not better than Julian Brandt, but I'm saying it's closer than people realize.
I'd be curious to know what the numbers are about how many times Brandt has been dispossessed versus how many times Verse has been dispossessed. Just because I think once again that's one of the biggest criticisms that we have of Brandt this season and over the course of his career is he can be sloppy with it, and the amount of passes he gives away and the amount of times that he is dispossessed or misfires, I think is also something to take into account. But I can't speak on the numbers per se because, like I said, I don't know what the comparison would be. But my assumption would be that Verts is a bit more secure on the ball. But once again, that's an assumption.
Tell us that, man. What is it?
Oh, like my internet's not that fast, so you're gonna have to bear with me.
All right.
Um,
Um,
so
I,
by
mhm.
so to pull this up, I'm almost there. We
I can
have
babble.
essentially also like the stats I have access to, I think specifically are very close to accurate for like XG, post shot XG, stuff like that. Like we're talking about like 1 to 5% gaps between like the best outputs probably and what FBref has. Whereas for miscontrols, dispossessions, I feel like FBref like I don't know what they're taking into account compared to what like a club would pay for in terms of their stats resources, but Julian Brandt this season has been dispossessed on here 1.3 times per 90 and has 2 miscontrols per 90, whereas Verts has 2.07 miscontrols per 90 and is dispossessed 1.88 times. I think that may have something to do with like how often Verts receives the ball. Verts receives the ball more. He's more involved in possession. Like, yes, Julian Brandt in this match was doing a ton of work in possession and like I said was over 40 passes, but I think his seasonal averages are much lower in terms of progressive passes, passes attempted, um and stuff like that. So like there's a lot that you would look into to compare those things. So statistically like I don't think that like um those stats would give you the whole story. And like, is there a gap there? Definitely, because like I mean, if I just like look up simply Vertz's like attempted passes, um, and attempted take ons, like Vertz is attempting 6.68 take ons per 90 Brandt is attempting probably closer to 4 and succeeding with about 12% less. Even lower a percentage after this. So like there are significant gaps in their game, but I just think in terms of like the final third numbers, like they're very similar. Um, like I said, Verts is still better. There's a lot of things Verts does better. Those statistics would show Verts doing worse, but I think those statistics are misleading because of how often Verts is doing other things. And like there's still a difference there, but I think that like with some of the back passes, we didn't see that narrative get talked about with Ian Matson, and I think Ian Matson in big games um, deserved a lot more criticism because in the short time he was at the club, he had some of those back passes, but they got ignored in a way that they didn't when they were getting made by Julian Brandt. And like if you look at that Atleti game, like Atleti missed a big chance to put us out of that tie. And I just think that like I'm trying to counteract some of the popular narratives that I think like overemphasize certain issues. But let's get into our actual topic for the week and preview Barca versus Borussia Dortmund. I'll let Ali talk about this as our native Barcelona expert, not Barcelona native, but
I'm excited
podcast.
for this rant.
Well, what do you guys want to hear? Because it's a tough a couple of matches for me.
So just I guess like top performing players, strengths, weaknesses, that kind of
yeah,
jazz,
of course.
Like,
of course.
Like talk to us about the way Barcelona are playing under Hansi Flick. Like
yeah, well, in the first encounter, this in the group stages against Dortmund. Wow, I just put on the Barca hat against Dortmund. The team was very much still adapting to Hansi Flick's way of playing. We were still leaking goals at the time, and that kind of changed around November. It's very much like a high intensity, high pressing approach to the game and very high line. Right now, that's important, especially with the recent adjustment from Dortmund in terms of formation and the desire to obviously play to our strengths in Dortmund. But the Barca fan base, so there's a split. Some people are saying this is a very difficult matchup, and Dortmund has the qualities to expose our back line, even though Madrid has had a problem. Pardon me. Bayern, obviously, right? They were like, that game was chaotic, but Dortmund have a better chance at doing it, mainly because if Seru is fit and he starts that game, and there's Karim and Bayer behind him, or to the side of him, however you want to see it. That's a very dangerous setup against Araujo and Kubarsi, because there's no Casado. He's injured. Olmo is also not fit. Now, if we're talking about the home game, like in Barcelona, I think that's, they can play with confidence. They could start Frankie de Jong. But if we're talking about the second leg, I know I'll get to the top performing players, and I'll start glazing Pedri. But like in terms of like the second match, I would imagine there's gonna be like a tactical shift to play a bit more defensive, a bit more countering, things like that. So top performers, obviously Pedri, who's been phenomenal all season, and he's finally getting his well-deserved flowers. Yamal is a game decider when he wants to be. I still gotta remind myself he's 17, because he starts getting too experimental at times, and I'm like, yo, just finish, just shoot, please. Lewandowski is finding form again. Fairman is excellent. We are missing Olmo, but having him in behind Lewandowski has been a treat, because he's my style of player, second striker. He just wants to get forward. He finds the pockets. Like, he's honestly amazing. And Rafinha has had a little dip in these past few weeks, but all it takes is one game, and he'll be back on it. There was the recent emotional display against Betis after the game where he was clashing with Flick and Ter Stegen that I don't like to see. But overall, it's gonna be a tough matchup.
So Rafinha was rested against Betis. Do you think some of those actions that I just learned about after the game are gonna impact him in the starting 11? Obviously, Ferran Torres has been playing a bit better of late. I think he scored against Betis. I think he scored in another match recently. Do you think that Rafinha would start? If you're a Dortmund fan, first, Ali, who would you prefer to see starting opposite Yamal?
Uh, as a Dortmund fan, I'd like Torres to start because Torres, and even as a Barca fan, I'd prefer him off the bench because as a starter, Torres doesn't really have the same impact, especially against a team like Dortmund that want to sit back. There's no space for him to run into, right? And that's what he's good at. He needs space. So as a Dortmund fan, I'd like to see him start because he's going to be playing against essentially a 5-4-1, right, in defense. And he's not really like a close control type of player. But if I'm a Barca fan, I'd rather see Rafinha. I'd rather see even Gavi off the left. Just someone who can find those pockets of space and create a shot for either themselves or somebody else.
So, Brian, I know you're a huge fan of Daniel Svensson. With Lamine Yamal lining up opposite such a dangerous winger in Lamine Yamal, would you potentially start Svensson in midfield or left back, or would you play Ben Sebaini at left back to kind of give you a little bit more solidity? You talked up Ben Sebaini, obviously, in this game.
So I don't know whether or not Ben Sebaini picked up a knock or something in this game because when I was, doing my notes and just looking at stuff, I saw that there was a little bit of a flag next to him. So I mean that would be something that would be needed to confirm, but it really depends on like what we're trying to do. If we're, excuse me, if we're trying to kind of play a more defensive game, then sure, Ben Sebaini is the no-brainer answer. But I don't know necessarily if that would be the right way to go about this game, just because this is a Barca team that's going to come at you and allow you to play, which means I think there's going to be a lot more space to exploit. So you want the players that are able to exploit that space to be on the pitch. So I mean, it just really depends on the approach, right? If you really want to kind of like turtle that like first leg away from home or whatever, then yeah, put Ben Spaini on. If you want to take the game by the scruff of the neck, I think you put Svensson on and kind of let the guys play. At the end of the day, I think that, the guys are pretty high on confidence right now, especially after the last two wins. And obviously, Barcelona is a completely different animal. But at the end of the day, like, it is the Champions League. You are going for it. It might almost even come off as a shock for Barcelona if Dortmund come out swinging right then and there, too, because they might think, oh, this is an away game for them. Maybe they'll try and play more defensive. But I don't know. I think there's pros and cons to both, and obviously it'll depend on whether or not there's actually any sort of injury to Ben Sebaini right now.
And I also think there's like a move you could essentially do to play like a 4-3-1-2 with Svensson next to Brandt and Gross, and those three guys kind of switching between 8 and 6 roles, um, with Ben Sebaini potentially at like left back to fill into kind of a back three at times and to play some of those longer balls in behind because he can do that for Guirassy to flick in behind for Bayer and Karim Adeyemi as those two really high forwards and kind of play like a little bit narrow, but allowing Maxi Bayer and Karim Adeyemi to also pull wide at times and take care of business by just running in behind relentlessly. So I don't know who I'd start in this match because I kind of want to see like on the merit of it, a lot of our midfielders don't deserve to start, and I think both Svensson and Ben Sebaini do deserve to start. But you just need to make sure you come to terms tactically, and make sure you have the right balance. And I don't have my coaching badges yet, so I'll leave that up to Nico Kovac. aside from our left back versus Lamine Yamal, is there another key battle that you guys see happening in this match?
The matchup that could be very important in this game is Balde against whoever the right wing or right back is. It's gonna be funny. Um, yeah, Balde likes to get forward, and in the first match we did see Duranville kind of make sure that Balde was like too afraid and so to speak, I put that in quotation, to get forward because he had someone to worry about. But in the recent games we have seen a shift in the Barca formation to like a 3-5-2 ish, depending on who's playing and who's not. So yeah, there's a number of them. Like is Gross gonna be able to keep up with Gavi or Fermin in the 10, or you know what I mean? Is you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of space to exploit, especially with Rierson tucking in. That we saw a couple times against Freiburg. So yeah, there's a number of them. The biggest one I would want, in terms of like as a Dortmund fan, is I'd put pressure on Frankie. Like, don't let Frankie breathe. He's not as mobile as he used to be. I would just make sure, like, if he's gonna play the ball, it better be one touch, because I don't want him having to like receive the ball, turn, pick a pass, things like that. That would be something that I'd keep my eye on, because Pedri, like, it's hard. I'm not trying to like big him up too much, but he is kind of hard to stop because he will pop up in different places and find the key pass. And yeah, I would like whoever's in the 10 is gonna have a big job.
Yeah,
Starting to think that Svensson and midfield thing might be a good shout, Eli. Honestly.
Yeah, like the physicality, I think, even with Svensson, because you're talking about like Julian Brandt and Gross. If we play a four at the back, if we play a three, I'd prefer it in some ways, because if you get Svensson next to anyone there, your midfield doesn't have to do quite as much. Um, and like Sean can step up, and then my key duel would be like our defenders choosing the right moments to stepping up, making sure that they commit a foul when necessary, um, or like at least make sure that like the ball doesn't get through in whatever way, and that they don't open up space in behind. I think the positive side for Dortmund is going to be like what Ali was talking about with Balde, but not just necessarily with Balde, with the linesmen. Like, we need to stay on side. Like, if Karim Adeyemi starts his runs a little bit deeper and is on side by like a yard or two, but he's able to be like not necessarily at pace, but like at a good run, I think he'll have plenty of pace to get on the end of some balls in behind, and that's where you can really punish Barcelona. Is if you can beat the offside trap consistently, I think they'll run into serious issues. But Hansi Flick has been one of the best coaches at teaching the offsides trap in the last 20 years, you could say. And like Maxi Bayer and even Gurasi, like as a late runner, could really cause significant issues. But yeah, I think my worry for Dortmund is those diagonal balls in behind from the 10 space. And like we need to make sure that even if the defense doesn't step up out of that back three, that we're covering good spaces to make sure that those balls don't get in behind. And then my duel or my matchup would essentially be Barcelona long shots versus Gregor Kobel. I've talked about how historically Gregor Kobel has been a Champions League riser, and I would be very interested in seeing that in this match, because I think that could really help us. But let's move on to our final preview and talk about Der Klassiker. Obviously, not a Klassiker this season in terms of the top two spots or the title on the line, but Dortmund could actually do Leverkusen a big favor and like make it squeaky bum time, so to speak, in Munich. But apparently now, bad news for Dortmund, good news for the player. Their young midfield phenom Pavlovic could be set to return, but they do have some potential guys missing in this. With Davies out, Ito has not played at all this season, got injured again. Upamecano, Kim, all out injured. So their defense is missing a ton of personnel. You're likely to see Rafael Guerrero, former Dortmund player, in that back line alongside like Eric Dyer and whoever's left. Uh, but do you think Dortmund has a good chance in this game?
I think so. And particularly it's because of like what you mentioned. I think a defense in disarray is the exact thing you want two players like Karim Adeyemi, Maxi Bayer, or a fit Serhou Guirassy to go up against. Um, I know like a lot of other players have been, playing better for them. I mean, Goretzka has come back in form for them. I'm pretty sure Leroy Sané scored for them on the weekend. But also at the end of the day, they were looking shaky at times against, this Augsburg side that they played. And I'd like to think we're better than Augsburg, especially in the last couple, match days. We've really shown a bit more of that Dortmund industry and ability to play high octane attacking football.
You do
And
remember we lost to Augsburg?
I listen. I don't care. I don't care. We're still better than them. It doesn't even matter. But that's kind of what I'm getting at with all these like defensive losses that they have at the back. I mean, basically their first choice defenders are all out for the most part. We don't have an excuse not to put the ball in the back of the net. And I think we will. I think this will end up being a very high scoring game. I mean, even if we look at the first game against them at home, the 1-1, I believe it was. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong if it wasn't 1-1, but I'm pretty sure it was 1-1. But we found space in that game on numerous occasions to be able to, put the ball in the back of the net. And not only are we finishing our chances better, their defense isn't what it was in that game either. So I think overall, I think we can totally win this game, even if it is an away game. Will we? That's another story. But I'm hoping we do.
I I'm actually in the same boat as you. There's something that which is I actually wanted to mention from the Barca game too, but something that Kane did that I think Guirassy is going to be able to do against Bayern and Barca, which is, now bear with me here, let me land, is so Bayern like to play a high line, right? So there's a lot of space in behind. Now with this new formation, something that Kane did really well against Barca and like Henry and Aguero used to do often, which is just stand 5-10 yards offside, wait for that ball to get played in behind to the wingers, and they'll be there because we're gonna have most likely, right, the fullbacks out wide, right, our wingers gonna be ready to go. All of a sudden our striker is going to be onside and ahead of that back line, who is not their starting lineup, right? That's not their starting back line. They haven't really looked comfortable. I know they've been winning and whatnot, but they haven't really looked as comfortable as they'd like to be. I think Guirassy exposes that line if he starts either game, to be honest.
Yeah, Musiala is also out, which hurts their attacking threat and potentially some of their control, because Paulinho may have to start, played in their last game. And the criticism of this team has been in big matches, like prior to this Leverkusen Champions League knockout tie, they hadn't beaten Leverkusen in 3 matches, including the Cup, the League. They drew us earlier in the season. They lost a lot of their big Champions League games, and they didn't get that top 8 position. So, like, maybe that's a real thing, and Vincent Kompany hasn't figured it out and just got past us. Xabi Alonso, his side was very fatigued. Their summer signings haven't hit the ground the way they would have wanted, especially at the ages they signed some of those guys at. They haven't been able to rotate that team. That's looked like injuries to Florian Wirtz and whatnot. But this Bayern backline, like, I forgot Stanisic is back fit, so they do have like still some Bundesliga quality fullbacks, top Bundesliga quality fullbacks in Conrad Leimer, still technically kind of a midfielder, and Stanisic, but like these guys are good players and they can play well defensively. I don't know who their fourth center back is with Kim out. Because if you look at their bench, I'm not seeing a center back. It may be Leon Goretzka, in which case like you may have serious worries about that defense, but
Or
it's
Kimmich.
also like Bayern Munich, so we'll see.
It
Or
could be
Stanisic
Kimmich.
could fill in
Yeah.
as fill in as a center back.
No,
Kimmich can play 11 positions. Let's be honest.
yeah, he's amazing. I'm not gonna lie, but no, I actually like as a Dortmund fan, I feel more confident about the Bayern game than I do the Barca game. I think we actually have a much better chance at beating Bayern. Just because I I know they're outscoring their opponents, but we're also a different side to when they faced us last. And yeah, I don't know, I feel good. Like last week I called 3-0 against Freiburg. I might give a crazy one this time around. I don't know, we'll see.
Okay, I think we can kind of wrap it up here with some double score predictions. First with Barcelona, and then with Bayern Munich. Ali, since you said you're feeling wild, do you want to start us off?
Okay, so the Barca game, I can't even do it with a straight face. The Barca game, I think Barca wins 3-1. Um, because I don't think we the Barca backline will be comfortable with Adeyemi's speed. Because last game he didn't play, and it's gonna be something completely new to them. Kunde is tired, and I mean tired, like he's exhausted. That's gonna be someone to target. And then the Bayern game, I think I could see a 2-1 for Dortmund, to be honest.
2-2 Barcelona for me, and 3-2 against Bayern. I think we win 3-2.
I'm gonna go with a 2-1 loss against FC Barcelona. I think they're. I mean, honestly, I could go. I could very easily see us losing by 2-3 goals in this match. Barcelona's the best team in Europe in this season so far. Over the course of the season, they did just drop Betis. They had that one weird run of like 3 games where they did drop points earlier in the season. I think it was 3 games. Maybe it was 4 or 5. But overall, I think they've been the best team in Europe. I think that they should be beating us, but we did get a little unlucky against them the first time we played them. So anything can happen over 180 minutes. But yeah, I think we lose by 2 goals. I'll go 3-1 with Ali, and then I think against Bayern Munich, the back line is looking tasty. I think Jamie Gitten starts against Bayern Munich. He scored in the first leg at home for Borussia Dortmund. This is an away match. I think this is a match that Dortmund has a very good chance of getting a result in. I'm gonna go 2-2, but I don't love that prediction. Uh,
I don't like predicting losses, but yeah.
yeah. I predicted a loss in the first one.
That's what I'm saying,
Uh,
yeah.
But yeah, I predicted a draw in the second, which I think 4 or 5 weeks ago we would have been taking as like a positive against Bayern Munich. So we put out an Instagram poll regarding whether we need a new striker. 50% yes, 50% no. I think this is in regards to a backup. The results for who it would be were 21% Nick Voltamata, 14% Ante Krunic, 20% for Mukoko's reintegration, and 43% stop asking we have Maxi Bayer. And I think I agree with the 43%. That's obviously not a majority, but I think that the common sense thing would just be to sign some wingers, and like if it comes to it, Maxi Bayer moves into that position. But that does kind of give you an issue where if you're starting your backup striker, you're starting your backup striker. So do you guys have a third option there, or a
Um,
fifth? I
I
should
mean,
say.
I personally didn't mind the signing of Ante Ternatz. I think with him, you get a pretty like imposing player. I think he's like 6'2", 6'3", and he has some pretty good numbers in the championship. And I don't think he'd necessarily be looking to start right away, so I think that's also good. And then personally for me, because of what I've seen from Max Bayer, like yes, I do believe that we do need another winger. But also I think that he can still play that role as well. So it kind of takes away from what you said, where it's like, oh, we're playing our backup striker, and that creates a problem for us. And the other thing is I kind of want to make sure that we keep Bayer in the starting 11 to make sure he can maintain the form that he's in, because he's proven that he can play on the wing. Like yes, he is a second striker, but he's totally capable of playing out there. So I think yes, we do sign another winger, and I think that's important. But having that flexibility there, plus maybe another player to kind of back up Girassi to kind of play that same sort of formation at times, I think that'd be a good option too. And I don't think it'd be an expensive signing either. So
Yeah, the issue with Krunic is he is 21, so you kind of want to be giving him minutes so he can develop. Because if he's the backup and Gerassi's going to play pretty much every minute as he has this season, and then in the matches he's not fit, he may not merit to be starting in some of these bigger, more important matches, is more the issue I have with that. With Voltemata, it's almost like you're spending so much money, like this squad has serious issues.
Yeah. I think the one edit I would make is it really depends on if we get into Europe or not, and we get those extra games. That's the one thing that I forgot to put in there, and I think that's also a crucial thing to keep in mind. Because if we don't have Europe, then it doesn't matter.
And which European competition? Because like Voltemata's way too good to be just playing Conference League. But we can move on. Per RN, Dortmund are going to go back in for Ryan Cherky because the third time is the charm, as they say, this summer, and plan to make him the star signing. Sverre Nipen, who's been rumored to go to City and Arsenal, is the first alternative, and he's another one of these Norwegian wonder kids playing it. It's a black and white club. Is it Rosenborg? Is it a different one? I'm currently forgetting.
I believe it's Rosenborg.
Rosenborg. Yeah.
My ball knowledge is unquestionable. How do you guys feel about that? Going back in to bail out a certain American businessman.
Oh, you could start with that.
I personally, I'm kind of over it. I feel like if it didn't work the first time, it didn't work the second time. There's plenty of players that we could go for, and there's plenty of areas that we could target to actually fix, namely the midfield, because we have been screaming for a midfielder. I'd rather that, like, whoever they bring in, whether it's one or two players, that be the focus and the star signing, so to speak, because I don't really care for the Cherky signature anymore, personally.
Who needs a 6 when you got Musa Kaba in the academy, 15 years of age, scoring a goal, playing that number 6 role? Brian, do you have anything else you want to say about Ryan Cherky in the summer?
I mean, with Cherky specifically, I mean, at the end of the day, kind of like what Ali said, there's been a lot of trouble with regards to that. So I don't necessarily know if, like, continuing to chase John Textor around and hope that he actually does business with us without, yanking our chain and kind of just like messing with us and wasting our time. I don't know if that's a smart move necessarily. I do like Sverre Nipen a lot in terms of profile of player. He can play as a 10, he can play deeper as an 8 even as well. So you have more tactical flexibility with a player like him. But during our How to Fix, we did talk about a specific player that I think Dortmund should target, and that's Martin Baturina. I think he'd be a great player to bring in for the 10. Can also play a bit deeper, so you can kind of play a little bit around more with that midfield in terms of lineup and all of that. Not to say that getting Cherky wouldn't be great. I think he's a great player. But you really have to take into account whether or not you think it's feasible, and if the club thinks it's feasible. And if even for 30 million, whatever the price is being touted at this point, I think that's a good deal for a player of his quality. But it really depends on if you're just wasting your time or not. And I feel like if you're more likely to go to get a player like Baturina, or in this case we're talking about Nipen, to play behind Brandt for one more year or whatever, and to come on as kind of like that impact sub, and you're able to get rid of, Gio Reyna, for example, and create room for him in that sense. I think that's a sounder route to take than, chasing Texter and Leon around at this point.
Okay, and then do we have any comments on the dirty little Shaheen rumors with him bullying Mukoko and Ozchan for taking extra shooting practice, aside from like it being build nonsense that we don't want to discuss? So we're
Yeah, if it's just build nonsense, then I mean, obviously it's nonsense. You kind of said it, but I mean, if it is true, then I think it's completely silly, and it would have kind of put Shaheen in not the best light taking over if it was the case. So keep it short.
yeah, if that's the case, he should never work in a serious job again. I mean, but we can't comment on the validity of it aside from that it's coming from Build. So lastly, we're gonna just quickly shout out the top 5 of the Bundesliga fantasy players. Ryu Sanugi, top spot. Pines of Bayer in second. Edward DC4 in third. FC Chico 09 in fourth. And German Plate in fifth. And I am less than 200 points off in sixth. So got to get back to it after a poor week. Garasi not starting hurt me. I thought he was going to be back in training. And then some defensive issues. Picked up a guy that got sent off, and my backup defender got 7 points. So could have been better there. But that'll do it for us. Is there anything you guys want to plug? Potentially a new podcast coming soon? I don't know.
Can leave that for you because I can see you're very excited to talk about it, and it's very much front and center. But you can catch me as always on Blue Sky, Brian Straub 94, writing for GGFN when time allows. And yeah, I just did want to shout out our polls on Instagram and all of that. Thank you guys for taking part of those, and we're going to be doing more of those. So we want to hear more from you. So keep on keeping on with that.
Fire. Just check us out everywhere. Blue Sky, TikTok, Instagram, like Brian said. And leave the next part for Eli.
Yeah, so we have a new podcast coming your way soon. It's going to be a lot of the Dortmund Dispatch people, but we're also going to potentially have some guests on in the future, some other English language Bundesliga content creators, because I haven't learned German yet. But we're just going to be talking about all the Bundesliga transfer-related stuff. So we're going to start by just talking about where some disappointing teams have gone wrong. We're going to stay away from Borussia Dortmund for the most part, but we are going to be talking about some Dortmund stuff there. But this is going to be a league-wide, Bundesliga-wide stuff. This is going to help you keep track of all the Bundesliga transfers. We're going to talk about the needs of some of the teams getting promoted. We're going to talk about where some teams went wrong this season, some teams that may have good prospects that they've signed already for next season. But we have a lot of transfer related content. We're going to be telling you what teams are doing good business, what teams are doing bad business, and what to expect of some of your summer signings as we get into the summer transfer window, because not a lot of time left before the season wraps up. But we're going to be breaking down everything pretty soon, and we're really excited to bring a second podcast to you. Marketability. Anyway, that'll do it for us. Have a nice day. And yeah, have a good one.